So my name is Betty. I think I've met most of you anyways, but just in case you don't know me yet, I manage our GCS Connect events. So today we're doing diversity. I know you're all eager to get started, so I'm just going to quickly run through some Zoom details that you might need to use. So if you look to the bottom of your screen there, we have a chat function. So if you click that, it'll open up our chat box. I really do encourage you to use that. We really like to try and to make our events as engaging as possible. So we like to try and keep the conversation going. That way you can join in the discussion as well. There's also a Q&A. And so for the Q&A, we encourage you to submit your questions using the Q&A instead of the chat. It's just easier for us to keep track of your questions and get them answered as quickly as possible. There's also a raise your hand button. So you can use that to raise your hand, and then we'll request to unmute you. You can unmute your microphone, and then you can ask your question out loud for the speakers. So now I will pass it on to your host for today. It'll be Jordan.
Hi guys, thank you for joining us today. Hope everyone is ready to have a good time and listen in, and hopefully take something away from today and some confidence to give them to be able to talk about these issues and raise them with any companies they are and any colleagues they work with. So I'll just give a quick introduction to myself, and then I'll introduce everyone who we have speaking today. So I've been in the IT tech industry now for 6 years. I initially started out as a help desk analyst. I then progressed into a data analytical role at Capita, where I spent 2 years. As much as I enjoyed the hands-on technical role, it wasn't really what I wanted to do moving forward. I felt that my main skills weren't being utilized. I actually have a good friend at GCS who's been here for 4 years. He twisted my arm over a beer and convinced me that IT tech recruitment was the way forward. So here I am 18 months down the line. I love being a part of GCS. As you know, recruitment has its many ups and downs, but it is amazing world to be in. I still love the tech world, and I feel like I've mixed the best of both worlds with my technical expertise and knowledge and my people skills. So yeah, here I am. Also, I'd like to explain why we've decided to do this diversity webinar. So it's actually going to be one of the first of a series of webinars we're going to do on diversity. As you guys know, this is a very important topic at the moment. It's probably one that's not discussed about as frequently as it should be. So for me, it really came to light with a conversation I had with my supportive CEO, David Bloxham, and that was regarding the Black Lives Matter movements in the media. We discussed that while the topic should be sometimes highlighted more from companies, perhaps so should the wider conversation about diversity. Of course, diversity is not just about race. Women are still underrepresented in certain industries, which is why today is going to be the first of our series of events to highlight this issue. Also, if you do want to join from our next series, please do get in touch with Betty or myself, and we can set that up. I'd like to introduce our first panelist. So Abu, if you want to switch on your camera and give yourself a small introduction.
Good afternoon, guys. So my name's Abu Bakr Salou. I'm based in West Yorkshire, just outside of Leeds. I met Jordan through a recent role I've started at Drax Power. Jordan helped me get placed into this role where I'm predominantly looking after the Maximo asset management application there, working as a senior support consultant. So my background is in IT service delivery, support delivery. I've been involved in some various projects in the past, both in the public and private sector. Predominantly my work experience has come from the north of England, so working in and around Leeds and South Yorkshire. In addition to this, I've also had the opportunity to venture out to Germany for a couple of roles. Most recently, I worked for Nike out in Berlin, and previous to that, I've worked in Frankfurt at the European Central Bank, and that on its own helped me gauge a bit of an understanding as to how company cultures one to another. Previous to my working career, I studied IT, specifically e-commerce at university, and since then, for around the last 15 years or so, I've been working in IT, which is an industry I really enjoy working in. I love technology, I love the people I work with and the challenges we see and we overcome with IT on a daily basis.
Thanks, Abu. Thanks for that. That's a great introduction. Adrian, do you want to go next?
Yep, that's no problem. Hi guys, I'm Adrian Gumbs. I've been working in IT for probably about 15 odd years now. I worked for various different software development companies. Love the experience thus far, and yeah, I'm a senior software developer, mainly in Microsoft stack, but also in a couple of Google ones as well. Working on enterprise software, and yeah, it's been an interesting ride working for various different companies. I've worked in the public sector for about 45 local governments. In a previous role, I've worked for property consultants, having to deal with a lot of banking, a lot of financial institutions as well. And now I'm working for Synaptik Digital on a piece of software called Polar, which is a piece of software for pharmaceutical companies to find rising stars in particular fields like oncology or various different other diseases or health related things, to see publications or see how much they've been particularly paid, because a lot of that information is dealt with in the US. But yeah, it's been an interesting ride, and I've really loved every moment of it. So I'm still heavily involved in tech, and I continue to stay there.
Thanks, Adrian. If anyone's wondering as well, me and Adrian are actually cousins. So yeah, so it's good to have an older cousin on here.
Great to be here.
TJ, do you want to go next and give us your introduction?
Yeah, no problem. Hello, everyone. My name's TJ. I am a Londoner who now lives in Devon. So I've worked in IT for over 20 years. I started out in like support, sysadmin type roles. And then I kind of moved into more service delivery. I've worked for media and gaming organizations and banking and law as well. So started out in IT in the late 90s and was often the token female in the IT department. I now work with a company called Rollmapper, and our job is to basically get companies to, reevaluate the way that they do their recruitment. We work with companies to remove bias from job descriptions and things such as educational bias. And we basically help companies to create a more diverse and inclusive workforce. So yeah, it's basically my job to fight for the minority, and it is very rewarding. So yes, that's me.
Thanks for that, TJ. We actually had an hour's call yesterday, didn't we, and ran through some stuff that your company does. And the main thing I loved, which I've encouraged people to look at, is the working from home tool that you guys incorporate, which is very eye-opening.
Yes, we do flexible work assessments. So we basically help companies realise the possibilities of flexible working and obviously remote working. And I think post-COVID, everyone's realising how much people can do from home. So that's always a good thing.
Susan, would you like to go next with your introduction?
Right, my internet just died, so I've joined on my mobile. Hopefully my laptop will come back. So, so I'm Susan Maddison. I currently work for Discover Financial Services as a senior manager. So I have a big cross-functional team of devs, QAs, DevOps people, NFT, etc. Building a shiny new enterprise payments platform for Discover. But I've been in IT for 20 years. I skipped the whole A-level uni thing and dived straight in. Started out in networking, got bored of the blue screen of death. Taught myself coding. I was a coder for about half of that time, like 10 years, and then decided I was, just average at the coding, and decided to go up the management route. I can manage people and projects standing on my head, eyes closed. So I've seen, you know, over the last 20 years, a big shift in, you know, females being more represented in tech roles, but then also, you know, the BAME community being more involved in every aspect of software and IT. So lots of adventures, lots of stories to share, and very excited to be on the panel.
Okay, great. So obviously we're going to discuss diversity as a whole. First off, I want to get everyone here listening to know more about you guys. So first question, what made you interested in tech and how did you start your career? TJ, would you like to start us off?
Wow, that's a really good question. Because originally I trained as a chef. So I'm completely, you know, completely different sort of vocation there. I grew up in a house where my dad was an IT engineer for Philips, if you can remember that name. And he was always building bits of computers from old computers. This was back when like a PC would set you back like $2,000. And we're talking like 5 1/4 floppy inch discs. And I always had an interest in IT. I like to know how things work. I used to take things apart, put them back together again. And it was just something that I always picked up quite quickly. So when I left sort of chef school, I wasn't really sure if it's what I wanted to do. So I just managed to find myself a job building hardware, building computers. And I really enjoyed it. And then I had my first job with JobServe, which was a database administrator, which sounds really fancy, but back then it was just a large Excel spreadsheet that we used to upload to the website. But I got involved with so many things there, and I'm obviously going to show my age now because I did a Windows 3.1 to NT4 migration, which some of you probably won't remember, good old NT4. And then my career kind of progressed from there, and I was always quite self-driven. I didn't have a degree. I didn't have that opportunity to go to university. So my biggest resource was my local library, where I used to take out manuals and books to like learn stuff because the internet was still in like its dial-up phase then. And literally I was just so lucky because I was surrounded by so many people who encouraged my interest. Obviously I used to work in a very male dominated environment, but a lot of these chaps would like take me under their wing and, you know, sit down with me, explain stuff. One of my early jobs was as a Unix sysadmin. And literally I've got a manual that's about 6 inches thick, that basically got me through my Unix days. But I was really lucky that I had so many people who were willing to encourage me and help me and teach me and like expand my knowledge. And it just become something that I really, really enjoyed doing. And then sort of after about 10 years in support, I wanted to be kind of more hands-on and have more of a say in how stuff's done and developing processes and just to make things better. So yeah, I didn't plan on a career in IT, it just kind of happened. So that's my honest answer.
So it sounds like you got a lot of encouragement. So it actually links into our second question, which as you brought it up, I'll link that in and ask you now. How important is it, do you think, to have mentors personally and professionally?
Extremely important, but it's finding the right mentor, because you want someone who can encourage you and give you that push. Sometimes I think we get too stuck in our comfort zone, and we're like, oh, this is fine. And I think having a really good mentor can sort of make you go for opportunities that maybe you wouldn't consider. I will honestly say that one of my best mentors was one of my old IT directors. And he was just absolutely brilliant. You know, he would encourage me to do courses, to take on additional responsibility, and he really pushed me out of my comfort zone and made me look at like what other opportunities are out there. And I'm always eternally grateful to him, George, if you're watching this. But he was just brilliant. But I will say, and I think Suzanne will probably agree with me, when I started out in IT, there was hardly any female mentors. There was no one I could look up to as a female and think, yeah, this is where I want to be. So I would say all of my mentors were male, who are helping me. And I think now there are far more females in technology, but back then there was no one for me to look up to and think, yeah, I want to be just like her, you know, in 10 years time. So yeah, I would say, yeah, if you can find someone, if you can connect with someone, or even someone who's in a role that you want to be in, you know, people out there will help you. You just have to ask for it.
Okay. Susan, what do you think about that? Leading that question on to you, how important do you think it is to have mentors personally and professionally?
Sorry, I'm on mute. So I'm a massive advocate of coaching and mentoring. I didn't share, but you know, I do actually have a side gig business as a life coach. I generally believe your level of success will never exceed your level of personal development. And one of the areas of personal development, along with, you know, reading stuff, etc., is finding a mentor or investing in actual coaching, training, whatever it is you want to do. I generally believe the fastest way that I learn, if you want to be somewhere, do something, go and find someone who's done it before and ask them to mentor you. They will generally be flattered and more than happy to help you. And ask them how they got there, and you'll literally collapse your timeline to getting to where you want to be, purely just by reaching out and learning from another human. So I'm a massive fan of mentoring. I do it within Discover, just off my own back. I think as people of diverse origins, I think it's even more important for us to be mentors and make ourselves visible like we're doing now on these webinars, because you can't be what you can't see. So I think, yeah, if anyone's interested in mentoring, then, you know, go look it up. But it is as simple as go message them on LinkedIn or email them or whatever it is, but reach out and say, you know, I really look up to you. I admire about this XYZ about you or your career, and I would really appreciate you being my mentor. And I would be very surprised if they said no. So definitely something everybody should do as part of their careers.
Good. That's something everyone can take away. Adrian, how do you feel? How important is it to have mentors professionally and personally?
I think it's extremely important. It's from my experience, there's not been, up until probably recently, I felt like a lot of the companies that I've worked for haven't invested enough in training, in mentoring, in helping people to develop. Because I think if you genuinely help people to become more, to do more, then you're going to get more from the company. And what I've personally had to do is I've had to do it outside. So to touch on Susan's point about I feel like you're only as good as your actual personal development. I didn't necessarily have many people to kind of like look up to and to learn those things. So for me, it was a lot of hard grafting, and what I found solace in was being able to find mentors more so online, from the States, from different countries, and kind of like look at what they're doing. YouTube was a big factor, Google as well, Udemy as well. And being able to put those things into practice enabled me to kind of like really collapse the timeline in terms of learning certain things and progressing from there. So I genuinely, in tech, I think it's absolutely critical to have the right, to have mentoring and to have the right mentor as well, who really understands you and you also complement them, because from teaching and from mentoring, it also reinforces it for them as well. So I think it's absolutely critical in tech, and I think more people should do it. So I commend Susan and TJ for both what they've been through.
Great answer. Also leading into TJ and Susan's answers, two of the biggest barriers women say they face in the technology workplace our lack of mentors and lack of female role models. So that's clearly still evident today. So yeah, hats off to you guys. I'm just evident on our time that we have at the moment. So I'm going to move on to question 3. So I'd like Abu to answer that first because he didn't get a chance to answer that question. Has workplace culture been a large or even deciding factor in why you choose to work or stay at a company?
In the past, no, but I'd like to see workplace culture evolve to try and address some of the issues we have in seeing people of BAME communities progressing and having access to the more senior type roles that are out there available. But I would say one firm that I have worked for, which was Nike, where the culture did really interest me. It did really look to consider people of all different backgrounds, genders, races. And I think in that type of culture, you naturally become more job satisfied as well in that type of role, where you can actively see where the management are trying to make a point of addressing the issues that we see, not only professionally, but outside of work as well. And yeah, certainly for myself, at least, job satisfaction plays a whole big role in choosing.
I think we missed your the last bit of your reply there, Abu. I think there was a bit of a lag with the internet.
Yeah, so I don't know how far we got to, but I said the culture and the importance of my employer understanding the challenges that are out there and taking an active part in trying to address some of the challenges we have in addressing issues that we have with BAME and people from different genders, races and minorities, having access to progression within their companies and up the career ladder. I think that plays a huge part.
I agree. We've actually had our first question come through about 5 minutes ago. So I'd like to just revert back to that question, because we did say we take questions from our attendees. So it's from Vaz Makar. He says, does a mentor need to be the same gender or background? Susan, would you like to answer that question?
Yeah, can do. So I think it all depends on how comfortable you are, because obviously, you know, if you would rather speak to someone who is like you and seems to have had a similar career path or trajectory to you, then that would make you feel more comfortable. Because I think with mentees, there's, you know, a certain level of confidence within yourself that might stop you from sharing, and the coaching and mentoring relationship's a really intimate one. If you want the best out of it, you've got to like give and share the crazy stuff that's going on in your head that's probably not true about your limiting beliefs and all that kind of stuff. So I think it might help you to have someone similar to you coaching and mentor you, but I wouldn't say it's a mandatory thing. You know, I think TJ and I obviously only had the choice of white males older than us when we were younger. You know, take what you can get, and maybe the best person, like I would say, like reach out to the person who's like the best that you can get to. And if that's a woman, man, black, trans, whatever, go for it. But I think it's really up to you, but it's whatever, it's not mandatory.
Cool. So it's just about being comfortable with the tech that you're in, and whoever is willing to help and is willing to reach out. Just while you're answering that as well, has workplace culture been a large or deciding factor in why you choose to work and stay at a company?
Not necessarily for me. I think over the years, yes, because you're kind of more aware that actually, yeah, you do have a choice. You can, there's plenty of jobs out there if you believe it to be so, and why not work for a company where everyone's fun, good humans, and you know, they have fun. It's not all slave driving works. But yeah, I think I've never wanted to work for one of like the big 5 top consultancies, because you know, you get the impression that it is pretty much work you into the ground. So I think a little bit, but generally I tend to go off who's in the interview, maybe from what I hear from other people. You know, you're with these people like 40, 50 hours a week. So better be a nice place to work with good humans.
Great question, great answer, sorry. Just moving on then to, we're going to move on to the next question. So have you noticed any areas where you think companies may be falling short or not prioritizing enough that would help achieve goals? Adrian, do you want to answer that?
I think especially with software, because that's obviously the department I'm in, being able to kind of like progress, because technology and this kind of industry is very, very fast paced. So it's constantly evolving, it's constantly changing. And I've seen so many companies fall into this trap of like this is the way in which everything has always been done. And new ways don't open, and old ways don't open up new doors, sorry. So where I found that companies really don't kind of like address the people that are in their companies, eventually they become stagnant. And some people are comfortable with that, and other people would sort of like be like, okay, well, what do I do? Where do I go from here? And try to take on new challenges. And I think that really does come back to one of the questions that you mentioned earlier about mentoring and also helping people to develop, and that also comes down with personal development. So I feel like a lot of companies, or some companies that I've worked for previously, are falling short in terms of the training. And I get it, because there's that whole element of, okay, we want profit, or we've got so much stuff that they want to get done. But every company and every organization starts from people. So I feel like if you invest in people and you give them the time, then you'll reap a company will reap the benefits.
Definitely, I think that's becoming more evident as well. Like we have things implemented here at GCS, and I've had it previously in my work environment. So hopefully, it's something that people do take on board. TJ, how do you feel? Have you noticed any areas where you think companies may be falling short? Because obviously, it's part of your role. So have you worked with companies where you've helped to try and implement these a bit more?
Well, I think Adrian made some really good points about if you look after your staff and you offer them these development opportunities and career progression paths, it makes such a difference to retaining your staff. People want to feel valued in the workplace. They don't want to just feel that they're like a number. They want to feel that they actually contribute something to the company and their contribution is valued. I mean, some of the things that we work with is obviously to increase the pool of diversity and talent when you're looking for like new people to come and join your team. And I will say one of the biggest barriers is that when companies have this beautiful shopping list of requirements for a job, and one of the biggest barriers is asking for a degree. So basically in the UK, around 27% of people have a degree. Okay, so straight away, by saying this person needs to have a degree, you are excluding, over 70% of the population. Okay, so you're saying that I don't want to look at this person unless they have a degree. So straight away, you've made your candidate pool go from that big to that big. And we work with companies to basically make them look, in a different way. So you're telling me that I've got candidate A who has 10 years experience, they've worked for these amazing companies, they've done these amazing projects, and they don't have a degree. So you're just going to go, oh, no, not interested. So straight away, you're missing out on talent, okay? Things such as flexible working patterns. You've got to realise you've got a whole population of like single parents out there who, they've got amazing backgrounds, amazing skills, but their circumstances means that maybe they can't work an 8-hour day. Maybe they can do a 5-hour day and still be completely effective in that time, but they're happy to work in the evenings and pick up some extra hours. And it's just making people realise that the 9 to 5 is dead. Okay, I'm sorry if I'm going to throw that out there and be controversial, but the 9 to 5 is such an antiquated idea that you work a 9 to 5. Flexible hours, splitting your hours. Maybe you want to do like 10 till 2, and then you've got the school run to do, but in the evening you're going to do 5 till 8 and pick up some extra hours. And it's making companies realize, by taking away this 9 to 5 that we have to do, because that's the way it's always been done, that you can increase that pool of talent and you can be more inclusive and you can have a more diverse workforce. But you need to change. You need to be open to change, and you can't, like Adrian said, you can't go, whoa, this is the way we've always done it. You have to look at new ways of working. We are a tech-dominated world now. We have technology at our fingertips to enable our lives to be easier. So why are we still saying you have to be in the office, you have to work 9 to 5, you take your 1 hour lunch at this time? You know, we need to change. The world's changing. COVID's made us look at everything completely different. Yeah. So, you know, we're here to help companies make that push. Come on, change, be more flexible. That way your workforce will be more inclusive and more diverse. I feel like I've probably ranted a bit now, so I'm going to stop.
That's all right.
So passionate about this.
You've touched on some great points, but you've touched on some really great points, though. Because even as a developer, I find that 9 to 5, it just doesn't exist. Like, I don't get into work for, let's say, 9, half 8 and finish at 5. It just doesn't happen. I will still probably be working 7, 8 o'clock at night. And I feel like a lot of developers and a lot of DevOps, if something goes wrong, by all means, we're gonna get a phone call, and we have to be there to kind of fix that.
I definitely agree with you guys, and I feel like this pandemic, as you mentioned, has helped maybe push things in that direction. Obviously, it shouldn't take a pandemic to help us realise that, but I do feel like we're moving into that. I'm just mindful because I want to take a question from one of our attendees. So it's from Kelly. She says, do you think that the coaching and support needed has changed direction in the COVID pandemic? How did your workplaces support you? Abu, would you like to answer that?
Sure. So, as you already know, Jordan, I've just started my new role, and yeah, it was the first time where I've not done a face-to-face interview. I had several interviews via Skype, and yeah, since I started the job, I've still not been into the office. I've still not met any of my team, anyone in my company. So I think how a lot of managers, even in my last role, how they tried to tackle this was having more catch-up sessions with the staff, and I think taken more of an active role in understanding how the staff are coping, taking an active interest in seeing how they're reacting to the world around us, and the health and minds of the staff, making sure that they can help out where possible as much as you can, because this is something that none of us actually expected. But as we touched upon earlier, I think just making more use of our human side within our roles, understanding needs of people around us, our loved ones and our colleagues. And I think that's shown the human side, especially in the IT sector, which we don't see as much. So I think it's been a very interesting time for myself and for the people around me, and seeing how we're all coping working from home as well at the moment.
I agree. I think that the endless Zoom calls have helped as well, and the Zoom quizzes have helped to actually support everyone and kind of make everyone feel included. I'm going to move on to our next question. So the tech industry in particular does tend to be quite diverse when it comes to talent as a whole. Have you noticed that reflected in most of the teams you have worked on? Susan, would you like to answer that, as you work in quite a big?
Yeah, it's I think the teams generally reflect the leader. So it's a bit of a tricky one, this one, because, you know, I will give the person the job because they can do the job. I'm not just going to sit there and tick some diversity, you know, requirement thing. But I do generally believe that this problem starts way, way outside of the corporate world. It actually starts like at home with the parents and the kids, and getting rid of all of those conscious, unconscious biases. Because, you know, if I'm So say I'm looking for really strong AWS Spark developers, and for whatever reason, there's just not that many girls or Asian people or whatever, and it's that we need to get people really interested in these topics from a younger age and get them trained up and then get them into these roles. So part of it is that maybe the recruiters aren't getting the CVs to give to me to even consider them for an interview. So it's a really multi-layered challenge, this getting the right talent into the various different roles. My team in Discover is, depending on which role you look at, but as a high level stat, it is 40-60 female male. But when you start to dive into the super technical roles, it is more male and more white male, unfortunately. But it's, I think it's really working closely with, your HR departments, your recruiters, to really stress that you do want to see more diverse candidates. But then it's, the people have to submit themselves, which is a confidence thing. And, starts from a very young age. So it's challenging. It's very challenging.
Definitely. So there's one or two barriers there. Adrian, how do you feel the tech industry in particular, does it tend to be quite diverse when it comes to talent as a whole regarding teams you've worked on?
I would say it's improving. It has vastly improved from, I would say, probably like my first job in tech. When the company that I worked for, I was I was the only black person working in the entire company. Everybody, every role, I think there was only there's only one other Asian guy, and everybody else was predominantly white. Again, same thing with the females. The females weren't in the very technical roles. I think that is also changing, and certain things that are now being addressed. Yeah, like now I'm working in the city, and I find it's a lot more diverse. Because before I was working just outside of the city of London, and now I'm in London, and it's a lot more diverse. But what I'm also finding is that people are in positions of power and influence in 15 years of working in the tech industry, in software development and also in support. When I first started off, I've only come across, I would say I've only ever come across one black director in 15 years. And that's in the company I'm working for now. Everybody in positions of power have been predominantly white. And I feel like that, the good thing about COVID and the good thing about a lot of the social conformities or the social issues that are coming up now is that we do want representation, but I do think that Susan also touched on a very good point that you want somebody who's fit for, who can actually do the role. And I feel like it's fine when they want people to kind of do the menial stuff at the bottom. They're not too bothered about, okay, who's actually doing the technical stuff or the day-to-day stuff. But then in positions of power and influence is very different. You're looking at leadership roles, you're looking at hiring roles, you're looking at directorship roles who are making real decisions that impact the company as an entire whole. We don't have a lot of ethnic or even gender diversity at that level, and I really do feel like that should change. And I think that we've made some movements, but I genuinely do feel like we haven't made enough, and it's something that hopefully will change moving forward.
Yeah, I love what you said, Adrian, and that's where the mentoring comes in, and us being on panels like this, because it is that with those leadership roles or any role where there's more mastery and experience. Yeah, that's where you need the mentors and people to speak up and share how fun it is to be in tech. I love it. Yeah,
and the thing is, something that I'd actually like to ask TJ to kind of chime in on is. Some of the barriers that I've personally faced, and I even still currently see, my company is still trying to address them, is that some companies aren't necessarily clear on what the criteria is to move up. So if you don't, it's kind of like trying to hit a target that you don't even know that's there. So if you're trying to move up or you're trying to progress or move up in whatever company that you're in, it's almost like, well, you don't know what the criteria is. You don't know what things they're specifically looking for. So how do you then acquire those things or get to those positions if you don't even know what you're supposed to be kind of like going for? So then for some people, and I know I felt it, is that you feel like you have to go to another company or you've got to apply for a different role because you don't even know what the criteria is at the one that you're currently in. So, so for me, it's always been like the lack of clarity there. So then when people do come to kind of like appointing somebody in a very affluent position, it's almost a case of they're going to pick somebody that's more like them, somebody who shares the same values. It's not necessarily somebody who might think of or do things in a particular different way, whether it be of ethnicity or culture or religion or even gender. It's kind of like a lot of companies that I've seen, big and small, just don't really define what the criteria is in order to be in the positions that you need to be in. Not just the experience, but okay, if you come from a lower position, how do you get to the higher positions? Because obviously at the top, there's a lot less seats at the table.
Yeah, good. So that will move us on to actually one of our next questions, which is going to be aimed at TJ. So when recruiting to create a diverse and inclusive workforce, what barriers can you remove to achieve this?
Well, firstly, the degree requirement. Yeah. I always say companies tend to have this massive, what I call a shopping list. And it is, I've seen job descriptions of up to 11 pages. Okay. I'm sorry, but I couldn't even be bothered to read an 11-page job description. And if someone was asking that, I'd be thinking, well, what are you going to ask of me when I get this job? One of the things that we do to work with companies is to remove the years of, the years requirement. So it's like, you must have a master's degree in computer science and you must have 5 years experience of JavaScript and you must have 6 years experience of Java. And it's all these, by saying all these numbers and all these years of experience, you're putting up barriers. Okay, so let's say 5 years of JavaScript. So you're telling me that you would discount someone who has 4 years, even though they might be incredible, and in those 4 years they've done some amazing things, but no, because you've got 5 years, they must have 5 years. This then obviously filters through from the hiring manager to the recruiter. So when the recruiter's screening the CVs, they're like looking through and it's like, oh, well, the hiring manager says they've got to have 5 years. Oh, this person's got 4.5. So you go on the no pile. So we work with companies to remove that bias as well. So rather than saying 5 years experience, strong experience in JavaScript. It's that simple. We go through your shopping list of requirements and we basically simplify them. We say that no job should have more than 6 requirements, okay? And these requirements are very clear, constructed sentences of no more than 17 words that clearly describe what this potential candidate is going to be, what is expected of them in this role. Basically, we keep the whole job description no more than 2 pages, and this includes information about the company culture, what you're going to achieve in this job, what you're going to be doing, what you're going to be working with, what the benefits are. So it's clear and easy to understand. It's eye-catching, it captures your attention, and you know exactly what you're going to be doing in that job, rather than these long, lengthy paragraphs of you will do this, you will lead a team, and you will project manage many projects. And it's designed to be engaging and to attract people and to be a level playing field, to make it an equal opportunity for all. And it's removing gender based words. For example, the word drive appears so much on job descriptions. You will drive, this, and that's a word that has male connotations. So a really interesting statistic in tech is, and I'm sure many people have heard this banded around before, is that if a man looks at a job description and he only has 60% of the skills required, he will apply for it. If a woman applies for a job, she will only apply for it if she can take 100% of those skills. Okay, so removing all these unnecessary skills is like the desirables. The desirables is the biggest one. So you have your list of you must have, and then it's desirable. the thing is, if candidates see desirables on a job description, they automatically think, well, you've put it on the job description, so it's probably actually a requirement. It's not a desirable. I don't have that. I don't tick that box, so I'm not going to apply. And that's where candidates self-select out. So you have to look at what is absolutely essential for this person to have in the job. You know, there's skills that people need to have from day one, but there's skills that people can learn in the first 90 days. So it's really looking at that job description and saying, well, what is absolutely essential? What do they absolutely need to have on day one? And it is removing just all the clutter, all the unnecessary stuff, all the desirable skills. It's just a clear, concise job description. Some of the companies we've worked with have seen an increase in 160% in their applicants and in the diversity of their applicants just by using this method. So yeah, I would say the job description, the job advert is the first barrier, and by removing all the unnecessary stuff, all the years of experience, the degree requirement, straight away you're going to open up your candidate pool and make it much bigger. I could then go on about flexible working again, but I think people know how passionate I am about that, so I will leave it there.
I would, yeah. Well, I would say that links into part of what we do here at GCS as well. We work with our clients and try to make them have a more open mind, and obviously that's one thing that we work with on their specs. So consult them on what the market's looking like, and as well what they're looking for, and if it's actually achievable. And if it's not, then we can work with them to find something that is. I just want to take another question as well from our attendees. I'm going to direct it to Abu. So it's from Taya, and it says, what do you think can be done to encourage more females to apply for a role in the tech industry?
I think the whole point of mentorship plays a massive part in this. And the mentorship, it shouldn't have to just come from your personal and social lives. I think companies should try and take an active part in addressing the gender gaps that we see within the IT industry. So as we've already discussed, provide a program of mentorship as part of someone's career progression as your staff grow and develop more experience, more skills. We should actively encourage their growth rather than let their skills and experience become stale. And I think things like these are easy to talk about, but to actively put them into HR process, put them into your staff development policies, I think that's a new challenge which I think people at senior leadership level need to recognize more and more. Often the value of having people from different diverse backgrounds is not often seen, but I mean, we just look at the Black and ethnic minorities, and you look at how many individuals have become entrepreneurs, started their own businesses, become self-employed, and yet, as we touched on earlier, we don't see as many people from these diverse backgrounds in IT leadership roles. And I think that's something to be aware of and to make a wider point, seeing the value of what we can bring to a company, not just to be seen as diverse and fair, but it's more to do with the success of the company. In some research that was carried out recently, it was estimated that by including people from these types of backgrounds in leadership, top management roles could potentially add £24 billion to the economy annually. So it's not something to be ignored. You know, there's value to be had for large businesses by looking into these aspects.
Susan, I can see you nodding. Is there anything you'd like to elaborate on Abu's answer there, or maybe agree with him?
Oh, there's so, like, and again, this isn't just the females into tech industry. It's like a lot of people into tech industry. And again, multi-layered problem. A lot of it starts from when you're a kid, and let's say your parents, your grandparents, they think, oh, girls can't be scientists, or, you know, Black people can't be directors, or whatever the stories in their head are, their perceptions of what the industry is like, are going, oh, it's a hard industry, or anything like that. those stories start there. And that's where the programming starts, is when you're a kid and your family. And then in schools, you know, maybe they don't promote the tech stuff, or for whatever reason, all those nasty, horrible boys are the ones that are in the IT classes for whatever reason. The girls don't want to get involved. So for me, it's, I would ask any of the individuals to really check their mindset, their beliefs, thoughts, and stories that are in their head about why they can't do something. Could be join the tech industry, could be run your own business, whatever it is. Because I think, and then really question where those things have come from. Because the story is changing. I think everyone on this panel will agree. A lot of these things are maybe old stories and thoughts, and there is a lot of work being done to change the perception of the industries, get more mentors, start, you know, spreading the word and training people and giving them the skills when they're a lot younger, putting the ladder down, all of that kind of stuff. But it really is, you know, down to the individuals to check their mindset and really ask, go and find some people who are working in that role and ask them what it's really like to be there. But then it's down to the recruiters being diverse, and they're bringing the candidates in, changing the words on the job descriptions, the people in the interviews being more open-minded. There's so many layers to this challenge, but I would definitely start with, you know, speak up if you are a part of the BAME or, you know, not so diverse people. Like get yourself onto panels and speak up and actually share what it's like to be in tech.
So gender diversity currently sits at 19% in the UK sector compared to 49% for all other jobs. So there's definitely a problem in the UK sector. I'd just also like to direct another question at Abu, because it's our next question, because you've actually worked in an international market. So how do you think the UK compares when it comes to prioritizing diversity compared to the UK, the international markets that you've worked in?
I think there's a bit of work to be done. You know, that we can't ignore that fact as well. At the moment, like I said, you know, as much as HR policies might have some wording to display that, you know, there's equality in every company here, but there is more that we can do. I think the IT industry probably doesn't suffer as much as some of the other industries, but I think certainly towards the gap in these leadership roles, there's a lot to be done. And again, it often comes from the type of culture that sits within the organization. When you look at the corporate level management, the senior directors, I think in their mind, they often have an idea of what their staff or what their senior leadership team looks like. So there's this point of having that unconscious bias, where if we dwelled a little further, looked at what else is around us, looked at what else is across these different genders and different communities and what they've got to offer, like TJ talked about earlier, rather than have fixed buckets of requirements that we might have, look a little further, look at what else we can derive from people of different cultures, different backgrounds.
Definitely. Where was you worked in Germany, didn't you, for a bit, Abu?
That's right. So
yeah,
I was actually, my last role was out in Berlin, which on its own is a very cool and diverse city. And like I said, I worked for Nike, where we saw loads of examples where they took an active role in sponsoring big personalities, sports personalities that were a little bit diverse, from a slightly different background, and to have that kind of representation from your employer gave me a great deal of job satisfaction as well.
Great. So I'm going to actually take another question from the audience. 2 seconds. Just see a good one. So it's from Niall. It says, what are some examples of diversity that diversity training that companies should be offering? TJ, do you want to answer that?
I would say unconscious bias is the biggest thing, and I think everyone's kind of touched on this today, and it is like, for example, I mean, I've heard stories about like hiring managers who will ask a candidate their favourite football team. And if it's a football team that they don't like, then that person is lost their chance. I think people tend to automatically sort of migrate to people that are similar to themselves. But do you really want to build a team that is just clones of you? Don't you want people to bring different ideas to the table? Don't you want different backgrounds, different ways of doing stuff? And I think the first thing people could do is look at unconscious bias training and removing that. That I think is the biggest key. And I know a lot of training companies do offer this now, and I think that is a hugely important step in making a change. If you're a white man, like I'm just using an example here, then it's more than likely that you're going to employ people that are like you, and that's how we end up with these teams that are all, you know, 90% white men who've all gone to university, who have those connections. Oh, you went to the same university as me. Oh, do you know so and so? Blah blah blah. I think nepotism as well is such an ugly word in the workplace, and sometimes people get opportunities that maybe they wouldn't get if their dad didn't play golf with someone else. And so I would say unconscious bias training is the first big step to actually opening your eyes and looking at this in a different landscape.
Yeah, I think I want to add as well. So I grew up in Saudi Arabia. And so I actually know more about Islam than Christianity, and because it's a very expat community, like you naturally you're interested in everyone else's cultures, and you know how the Swedish celebrate, the Asians celebrate. And I think that's the biggest thing for me leading, you know, international teams. And it's really easy to learn. It's like, find out when do the Hindus celebrate? What do the Swedish do for Christmas? Like, remember Diwali and Eid, and people are fasting. Like, actually really understand what is it important to your Muslim staff, what's important to your Sikh staff or people over in China. When's their New Year's? They're not going to celebrate New Year's Eve the same time as you. And it's really, I think, a basic understanding of all the different cultures, I think, is really good when it comes to not so much diversity but inclusion. I was on another panel earlier this year, and they titled it "Diversity is Nothing Without Inclusion," because it's all great hiring a bunch of mixed people, but if no one understands each other and knows how to treat each other, aware of their cultures, that starts to drive a bit of misunderstanding and perhaps division. So I think for me it's cultural awareness of how other people are celebrating. Are they going to be fasting? Whatever it is, I think that's important as well.
Great answer. That links into my actual next question. So what kind of diversity initiatives have you seen in place at your present or past companies? Why do you think these have been successful/unsuccessful? Adrian, do you want to start us off with answering that question?
That's a hard one, actually. I haven't, from the companies that I worked for previously, I haven't actually seen much cultural awareness where they actually are celebrating other cultures or religions other than the ones that us as being in the UK have kind of celebrated, whether it be Christmas, Easter, and vice versa. Working for a larger corporation and being in London, which is a lot more diverse, at the moment it's kind of like they're making more sort of like aware, sort of like email campaigns to say that this is what's going on and you could be included in this, but it's not necessarily just around culture, it's also around other things. So it could be sort of like World's Book Day, could be World's AIDS Day, because where I work in pharmaceuticals, there's a lot of other things that are also going on around in different parts of the world as well. So there might be sort of like charity or charity or donations where they're trying to bring up donations for World Women's Day or women in pharmaceuticals as well, because that's also quite male driven as well. So I've seen certain things where I feel like that's where they're starting to touch upon those things, But I think Susan made a fantastic point about, I think if you want to kind of engage in more diversity and more culture and more religion, you've got to make them feel like they're included. And it's not just a case of including in the sense that, okay, yes, we're going to do this because it's Eid or this, that, and the other, but how can you include other cultures to come and celebrate with them as well? Because I think that brings about a whole new and a whole vibrant, and it's the fact that you're not a Muslim, but you're still being able to celebrate Eid with people who do celebrate Eid. Like I've celebrated with Muslims when they're fasting and stuff like that. That's just me personally, but I won't eat around them because I'm just like, hey, you're going without food for a long period of time. I'm going to be respectful to your wishes and what you're doing and kind of like, and not do that stuff around you because I'm culturally aware of what it means to them at this particular point in time. So I think this whole thing about inclusion, I think that's where you can have the more open discussions, where you can have that more cultural awareness, where you can engage with more diverse people and people who are different and see the world differently to you as well. So I feel like those are the things where I've seen major successes, and the things where companies or even just people in general kind of fail is because they're unaware of that.
Great question. I do also think that relates into your upbringing and upbringings and who you've seen around you, and I don't know if you've gone to school with different religions and different types of people. I then think that then carries on into your workplace.
I agree, but then that also comes into what Susan was saying before about upbringing and certain things that are dealt with in the home, in the household. Now, one of the things I know I've spoken to Betty about before was about, like, especially in terms of history, a lot of ethnic minorities haven't really had the narrative. They haven't been able to tell their side of the story, and I feel like a lot of things, and especially given the current circumstances, not only in the country but in the world, where people are becoming more aware of, actually, this is what we were taught and this is what we know, but actually that wasn't necessarily the case. There's a completely different side that has never ever been told. And when you have the ability to be able to learn from both sides, you start to go, okay, you have a very different opinion, you have a very different look on life. And that does come from exposure to different cultures, different religions, and that is also perpetuated not only in media but also on the TV or in what we read in the newspaper, and those also bring about certain cultural biases as well. And I think that until we start, it is good that people are starting to do this cultural, this unbiased kind of like training, because once you start to realize that actually that is a bias, because a lot of people go completely unaware that it is a bias, whether it be from a black culture, being raised by a predominantly black family, or whether it be an Asian, or even whether it's white. We all have biases, and when you start to interact and engage with other communities, I feel like that's when you start to become more aware of them, and it does start from home. It really does. And if you've been going through, let's say, the 80s, and you see, or in the 90s, and it's not so much necessarily even just in this country, but definitely in other countries, if you only see black people on the TV and that's all you see, then what do you think? How are you going to engage with a black person when you see them on the street from a young age? And it's not until you actually speak to them and you speak to different ones, you're like, oh, hold on, this person's like that, and this person's like that, and they're so different, even though they may have some cultural similarities. Everybody is still individual, and I think a lot of that is starting to be addressed more now with where we are in the world, and I think it's only a good thing. The narrative is starting to change.
Great answer. Abu, what do you think? What kind of diversity initiatives have you seen at your workplace in past or present companies, and why do you think it's been successful and unsuccessful?
As Adrian alluded, that is a bit of a tough question, because I couldn't really say I've seen as much as I'd like to see, but things we could do, certainly agree with some of the stuff we've already said about being more culturally aware about people we work with, people around us, the world around us, and taking into consideration where you might have two staff working in the same roles, what kind of challenges they've had to overcome to get to where they have, with the background and gender, whether we try and solve the problems here in this conversation here, or just having that awareness, I think that would go a long, long way. And that responsibility doesn't strictly fall just on the leadership or the HR, but it's amongst the staff, individuals. As humans, I think we should take more action there in changing ourselves, and then hopefully change the world around us.
I think that's a great answer. I've got another stat for you guys. 2/3 of tech leavers indicate they would have stayed if their employer fixed its work culture. So clearly work culture is a big thing these days. And hopefully it gets changed. Just going to move into my next question now. One of them we've actually answered without realizing. In your experience, have you seen a diverse representation of an executive or managerial level? Why do you think that is? TJ, do you want to answer that?
Well, I will say, working in London for good 18 years of my career, you would see a much more diverse range of managers. Now I'm down in Devon. It's a little bit different, but it's a really hard one for me to answer, to be honest, because I've been down in Devon now for 10 years, and it's a very different culture to London. I think probably Adrian or Susan might be able to answer this one a bit better than me. I can see Adrian look at me passing the buck.
I mean, I'll jump in quickly. I mean, we've touched on it quite a bit. It's the story is changing about kind of bringing people up. Like, I think from a human level, from individual level, schools, companies, we're being a bit more diverse and inclusive, but when it comes up to like the leadership levels, there is less of a pool of people to pick from. And that is because I think maybe the lack of mentors, because when you get up to the mastery levels of whatever it is, you do need to be really, really good at what you do. And if you've only been given the opportunity 2 years ago, like, you're not going to learn 10 years of stuff in 2 years. So I think even more so, I think have the top-down approach and having a lot more mentorship and putting the ladder down and opportunities at the leadership level. I think that is a bigger, I think we should focus more on there than at the individual contributor level, because when you have more of the diverse leaders, they will naturally kind of attract people into their company and enforce that culture. So I think we should be doing a lot more work at the leadership level.
I couldn't agree more. I genuinely agree more. Like, from a lot of the boards and the panels that I've kind of seen at the influential or managerial and above, you don't the whole thing of diversity just, for me, significantly decreases massively. I don't know whether it's a case of, okay, maybe they need some grassroots sort of like clear cut, okay, these are the incentives or the trainings to get to these particular levels in companies. I think it's a lot more difficult to tackle in an SME or a smaller company, especially if it's family run as well. But I feel like a lot of the bigger companies, I think, because of the social awareness of actually that's now becoming around, it's kind of like they know that these things need to be addressed more. There needs to be more representation, whether it be in an organization, whether it be in tech, whether it be even in politics. It's a case of we need to have more representation, not only just people of different diversities, from different nations, from different countries, from different cultures. And it comes down to this whole notion of inclusion. It doesn't necessarily feel like we are included if we don't see anybody at the top who understands where we've come from. It's very difficult to turn around and for me to turn around and say what it's like for, let's say, for Susan, who grew up in a completely different country, or TJ, what it's like to live down in Devon. But then for them as well, it's going to be very difficult for them to understand where I've come from. But if we are open to include them and to engage with them as to understand what it's like culturally, what it's like for me individually as well, maybe then we can start to address some of these these challenges that are being faced by different ethnicities and different minorities and different and have more diversity at the top. But at the same time, I do kind of feel like, okay, yeah, there needs to be that experience and people being able to who can actually do the job. But at the same time, I think we need clearer guidelines on what it actually takes to be there, to be at that table. And I feel like even in my current role, it's kind of like, okay, if I wanted to move up, what particular things do I need to have? What particular things do I need to do? And if they're not clear, it's kind of like trying to hit a target that you don't even know that there's a target even there.
Okay, so you both mentioned, Susan, do you want to say something actually before I start?
Yeah. No, I kind of just wanted to say that I think this is a hard one, because I think with all of the stuff that we're doing now, the leadership the stats, the representation in leadership roles will start to change in a couple of years. So I know there's a lot of data stats questions in the chat here. I know that we're only really tracking, the government only really track gender stats at the moment, but I think they are going to legally start tracking diversity. But I swear, from all the work that you're doing, you're suddenly going to start to see changes in leadership, because unfortunately, being a leader, you're not going to necessarily do it straight out of uni. You might be if you're very entrepreneurial, but it just comes with time. And I think us being more diverse and inclusive now, give it 2-5 years, we will definitely see a change in the leadership stats. It's just unfortunate we're working with 20-30 years of history here.
I agree.
Even longer than that.
One thing that you both mentioned is obviously the leadership and the challenges. So if they're there, how do we get the entire companies that we work in, including leadership teams, on board with diversity initiatives? How do we go about doing that? Susan, actually, no, TJ, do you want to answer that?
That's a tough one. I mean, it's really hard to answer. You have to be open to change. It's as simple as that. If you don't want to change, then your company's not going to change. If you're in a position of leadership, you need to be leading this change, and you need to help people. You need to give them a hand and move them up. But I think it also depends on the size of your company as well, the sort of demographic where you are as well in the world, in the UK, because obviously we've already established that in the UK there's, London is a huge multicultural city, Birmingham's a huge multicultural city. Down in the southwest, like the further you get to Cornwall, the less sort of multicultural it is. I can vouch for that. But if you can't recognise what you're doing is wrong, then maybe you're the problem.
Why would you change it?
Yeah. But
I'll open it out. Does Abu, do you have anything to add?
Not far from what TJ has said, and I think it's that conception in these minds of these corporate leaders that we're used to seeing. I think changing the vision that they might have of what their ideal senior leadership team might look like. I think that's where, rather than corporate leaders sharing their vision and strategy, I think we need to talk about the individuals, staff that you've got working with you. Ask them, individuals from these communities, these genders, what does your vision look like within this company? What would make you more satisfied and give you the chance to progress in this company? I think that's where traditionally, where we've thought of vision coming from top down, I think there's opportunity to listen to the people below as well, to help them get to these same roles that you've been successful in.
I think as well, I'd like to answer that as well. When we say how do we get entire companies and leadership team boards on, I think obviously things like this, like what we're having today, will then help snowball effect and help give companies, I don't know if there's anyone in companies that's out there that wants to do something like this, it'll give them the more confidence to be able to do that. So I feel like little things that we're doing like this, webinars like this, just being able to talk about it, will then help other companies and other individuals to have the confidence to do it. I'm just mindful as well, because we've got 15 minutes left and we've got 3 questions. So I want to motor through these questions. And I want to take 2 more questions maybe from the audience. So yeah, let's just motor through it, guys. What would you say are the main challenges when implementing a diversity program across the business? Adrian, do you want to start us off with that one?
Okay. So one of the things is getting, I feel like if there's not engagement, and what I mean by engagement, I mean not just sort of like an email blast out from, let's say, from HR or somebody from there. I mean an actual sort of like a real effort to actually engage with the people and what's actually going on and what they're trying to do. Whether it be sort of like, okay, having something fun where you might have a quiz and just kind of like educate people on certain topics or things that are relevant, not only just within the company, but socially, economically, politically, culturally. And I feel like by being able to do that and getting more people included and engaging with them as an actual person, because you don't necessarily have to do it one-on-one, especially if you're a CEO. You're not going to go around, if you've got like 500 people, like Susan had like 500 people that she was overseeing before, you're not going to kind of have a conversation with 500 people. That's a lot of time. But being able to kind of like have events and have talks and have Zoom calls, or even have sort of like, even at a celebration, kind of like, you're more likely to have an open conversation and engage with them and get other people included. Then you can have conversations, then you can have an understanding. It's all about, for me, it's all about finding that common ground. So Abu touched on it, and I know Susan touched on it, and even TJ touched on it. It's not just a case of, okay, how does the top engage with the bottom, but it's also, the top's also got to see that actually the bottom, not just actually doing the work, but they can actually help you. They can actually help you become a better person. They can actually help you with actually making the whole organization better as a whole, because ideally they are part of the organization. So for me, it really is about inclusion. It really is. And engagement.
Susan, I see you nodding. You wanna jump in?
Always nodding. I think it's a really tricky one. So it's got to be fully supported from the top. You know, if your leader literally does not care about this stuff and does not realize the whole world is changing and the company has to change, then you're kind of like dead in the water. So there's that, yeah. But then I'm a big believer of the storytelling and action. It's all like we're acting now. We're actually doing something about it. Whereas people do this, they just talk a lot. Well, are you going to go in an event? Are you going to go at the family Sunday dinner? Are you going to talk about how tech is wonderful, how girls and diverse backgrounds can do X, Y, Z? So I think it's as individuals, actually speak up and do something. But then within the company, I'm a big fan of like the storytelling humans. We love stories and we like to hear about other people. So I think for me, it's like, get these diverse people and get them to shout about how much they love tech and tell the positive story and how it's changed. But then also I think thing that works is, I think Adrian was touching upon it as well, like go within the company and go set up a focus group. We're all about agile and being empowered and allowing them to come up with the ideas. We'll go, okay, here's the challenge, here's some money, here's some parameters, here's the goal, you guys go and solve it. You know, you're the people within the company, you come up with some ideas of how you want to do it.
Yeah.
So I'd say, get everyone involved.
And just a quick one to add on top of that is that, imagine if that was successful in your company, why couldn't you then go and do that in a community? Why couldn't you go and then do that in schools, in colleges, in universities? And then the company, then look at the impact and the value the company would bring to everyone. And I think that definitely is something that can be touched upon. Sorry, go on.
No, I agree with that. I was going to relay that over to TJ, because this is probably part of what she does in work. Like, what would you say are the main challenges when trying to implement the diversity program?
I completely agree with both. Echo what Adrian and Susan said. It's having that support. It's recently we won a project with a very large global engineering firm, and the way the whole project was managed, the engagement right from the top right down to the hiring managers was amazing, and everyone was so motivated, and it was a very big project. So when the results started coming through, the hiring managers were actually, well, you know, I've had this role advertised for 6 months, I've had 2 applications, you've redone my job for me, I've had 45 applications now, and they can see the effects, and then people talk. people talk, you know, you should work with them. I've had some amazing candidates, you know, they've given me a whole way of looking, you know, a whole new way of looking at things. And it is that support, the engagement, having people behind it, having people pushing and shaping the project is the utmost important. You can't just drop it with someone and go, off you go, run with it, see how you get on. It's having that support on a global company scale, and, you know, people being aware that this change is a positive change. This is going to have an amazing impact on our company, you know, like, it's exciting, but it is having that engagement and then seeing the results, and then people having those conversations and saying, actually, it's made a big difference. You know, a positive experience, you're going to tell people. But yeah, it's getting everyone involved, not just like picking it out because you think it's a buzzword and you need to address it that month. It's making that change and keeping that change and constantly shaping and pushing it. So
that's fine. As you said, it's a positive change. Another stat I have: increasing workplace diversity can boost the UK economy, by 24 billion a year. So
yeah,
clearly,
I think Adrian said that.
I'm mindful of the time we've got left. We've got 7 minutes, so this will be the last question. So clearly, we spoke about all the challenges and things we can do to implement the change. Over the years, have you guys seen a change in terms of the drive for diversity, whether that be in new forms of strategies being added to company values and team discussions? And do you feel like what we're doing here today, and more companies are actually highlighting it, do you feel like there will be a change? I'd like to open that to Abu first.
So in my experience, I've not seen that much change over the years, but I think we're talking about these things at a very crucial time. We've all come from various backgrounds, worked with different technologies, different experiences, and within IT, there's so many niche skills that recruiters and employers are looking for, and to enable them to retain these staff with specialist skills, specialist backgrounds, that's going to become more and more important, more and more of a challenge. And I think that's where sharing these kinds of discussions, these kinds of topics and points is important, where hopefully we can get people in leadership and corporate roles to understand the value of having these kinds of initiatives, and not just as buzzwords, but actually having a program in place to actively look at what kind of value this will give back to their business as well. Because at the end of the day, if the business doesn't benefit, not many organizations, no matter how big or small you are actively going to invest in such programs. So that's where I think we should encourage companies to explore these kinds of topics in a bit more detail, and how these could add value for staff in order to retain staff for longer and attract the right type of staff going forward based on their skills and what they've got to offer to the company.
Great answer. Susan, do you have anything to elaborate on? Do you want to answer that question?
Yeah, I mean, this is where I kind of go off on a bit of a rant, but I'll keep it short. But it's all great. I think, like, everyone on the panel, everyone in the audience, and everyone watching the recording, like, start with you. You go get some diversity training. Be aware of your conscious, unconscious biases. When your kid or your niece, nephew go, oh, I want to be a coder, I want to be president or whatever, don't crush the dreams. Like, okay, how are you going to do that? What skills do you need? Let's go find a mentor. Let's go do this. Because I think it's if the collective we, and you start with yourself, the individuals, really change your mindset and be more open-minded to anyone and everyone being able to do anything, that's what's going to change the world over time. But, you know, so it's all great with us being here, but out with your friends, your family, like, start talking about this stuff. Like, go learn about some unconscious bias training, or maybe ask the question, go, why do girls think they can't play rugby? Or why do Black people not, you know, be on the board of stuff? Like, ask the questions and just start, you know, raising the awareness, but change yourself as an individual and then share what you're learning.
Great answer. TJ, do you want to elaborate?
I can only
Sorry.
echo what Susan says, really. It's like, don't be afraid to have the conversation. I think sometimes like we're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't broach that subject. You know, I don't want to offend anyone, but have that conversation. Reach out to people that are different to you. Ask what you can do to be better and to help, and to not just be a bystander. You know, if you see something that's not right, stand up and, you know, talk about it. You know, just like, change has to happen. Like, but if everyone just keeps ignoring things and not having these conversations, then it's not going to happen. So don't be afraid to have that conversation, would be my advice.
I do feel like things are changing and these conversations are happening, like I said, more frequently and more often, which is a good thing. And like you said, the change can only be positive. Adrian, do you have anything to elaborate on from?
I feel like it's a pendulum, because in some ways I kind of like turn around and I think, okay, yeah, there's a lot of things that haven't changed, because some companies, it's like the same status quo. But in the other way, I kind of feel like, whether they like it or not, there is a massive change coming. There's a massive wave coming, and I feel like companies are going to adopt it. A lot of that, I think, comes also from different countries, from different organizations. So if you turn around and look at current countries and their economies and stuff like that, companies want to turn around and be a part of that. They can't be a part of it if they have their own social conformities that go against that country or that culture of that country. So a prime example is, if you look at I think over in India, an Indian has now become the third richest person in the world. Why is that? So if you've got a country that wants to now go and do business or trade over there, they've got to adopt different ways of turning around and doing things. And what you're finding is now that different countries and different people are all now starting to mingle and mesh and engage with each other, and that is forcing these difficult questions. They're forcing change. They're forcing diversity. I think with technology exploding the way in which it has, and it continues to do so, it's also shining a light on these different areas of the world, on these different things. So there's political issues, there's economic issues, there's technological issues as well. But I think with technology and the way in which it's evolved, I think it's just made it a lot easier to kind of like see that these things are going on and see how it's actually impacting us, not just personally, but also socially as well. So there is a change, and it is changing constantly and evolving. It's going to be interesting what happens over the next 5-10 years. Great answer.
So we're actually out of time now, guys. Is there any questions that anyone would like to ask before we do leave? I'm in the panel as well, and the attendees. Any points that you'd like to raise further or discuss at all?
Just reach out to us. Connect on LinkedIn. I'm sure they're going to share all the deets, but yeah, reach out, don't be a stranger.
Thank you guys for attending. Adrian, TJ, Susan, and Abu, thank you guys for speaking on here today. Everyone else out there, thanks for attending. I just encourage people as well to join our LinkedIn group that me and Betty have created. We'll post a link in the comments to obviously keep the conversation going. We'll also let you know when we're having our next event. As we said, we plan this to be a host of series that we're doing. And if anyone's interested in speaking to a future event, please do obviously contact me, Betty, or my CEO, Dave Bloxham, or anyone from GCS. If you do know us, do reach out to us. Don't feel like you can't, because we're all approachable. And as I said, this is all a strong matter that we all care about. So thank you everyone for joining.
Yeah, thanks guys. Thank you very much for putting this on.
No worries. Take care guys. Bye.
Bye.